everyone. My name is Cheyenne Orobia. I am a 2016 graduate class of YouthBuild Louisville. I'm thrilled to be here today celebrating the place and the people that saved my life 8 years ago. I am amazed and excited at their new growth and their new identity. I am so honored they asked me to be a part of this celebration today and are allowing me this platform to share the big picture of my life story. In 1992, I was born in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I had two much older brothers that had been born in Louisville, but my stepfather was in the Army and was stationed in Virginia at the time. My mother and his relationship was not a good one, and they divorced when I was a small child. My mother moved us back to Louisville in the Crestwood area of Oldham County, and not long after, remarried again. I started school in Oldham County and thrived there, even though there wasn't anyone else in the entire school that looked even remotely like me or had close to my skin color. I didn't want to be there because over my childhood years, my brothers moved out and in with my grandmother. Once they were gone, the abuse I suffered at the hands of both of my parents got worse and worse. The abuse was emotional, sexual, and physical. I was numb because I didn't know what to do or who to turn to. I could tell by hanging out with the others at school that my situation was different than everyone else, so I kept my mouth shut and my head down. One night, when I was around 12 years old, it was a particularly nightmarish night, and I just couldn't take it anymore. The next day at school, I talked to the counselor and told them what had happened. The next thing I knew, I was being driven directly to the home of the innocents. No one told me where we were going or bothered to explain to me what was happening. I hadn't been allowed to go home and get any of my clothes or my things. I was in a foreign place now and had no idea where I was or what was going on. I felt so scared and out of place. After several days out of the blue, my grandmother showed up and got custody of me, and I got to leave and go home with her. My brothers already were living with her, so at least there was some familiarity being there. My sweet grandmother did the best she knew how, but she worked a third shift job so she could feed all of us. This situation left me with no supervision in the evenings. It was just my older brothers having parties, people constantly coming and going, doing drugs, and basically street culture right in my living room every single night. This, combined with the fact that I was now starting back to 9th grade at Iroquois, was a combination that was to be the beginning of my new lifestyle. And it wasn't pretty, and it wasn't safe. The culture shock of going from Oldham County to Iroquois threw me for a loop. The students were dressed totally different, talked back and yelled at teachers, fought or were picking fights all the time with one another. I really tried to become invisible, but that didn't always work out in my favor because I was the new Filipino kid, and I was an easy target. The bright spots in one of the worst years of my life was the time I discovered my true passion for singing and music through the school chorus class. It was the one iota of peace and happiness in my life that I had that year. I also was assigned to a shop class where I learned welding and masonry skills. I excelled in these classes and I loved working with my hands. Plus, who doesn't love something that they're good at, right? Before the school year ended, I was walking down the hall and being bullied so badly, I was coaxed into a fight to defend myself. This being in the wrong place at the wrong time situation ended up being my fate, and I left school for good. I tried later to go to Liberty and earn my GED, but again, that was very short-lived. I couldn't grasp the schoolwork because, as I found out later in life, I have central auditory deficit. This must have been why I excelled at all those shop classes that I love so much. My only wish was that I had discovered this while I was in school so I could have understood why I wasn't doing well in the academic classes. So at this point in my mind, I just totally gave up and accepted this as my lot in life. For the next several years, I got a job at a nearby Dollar Tree working for minimum wage and running the streets, hanging out with all the wrong people, doing all the wrong things, doing drugs, being in abusive relationships, sleeping on random couches, absolutely zero direction in my life. The lifestyle eventually led to me losing my job. One of the abusive relationships then led to a pregnancy. Things were a mess. I had picked up tattooing from one of my brothers, and at the time, at least it felt good to have some type of artistic expression. So I got a terrible little apartment in an equally terrible neighborhood and survived by doing freelance tattooing out of my apartment. The father of my child was much older than me, and as I mentioned before, very manipulative and abusive. I did drugs to numb the pain. I knew I couldn't take care of my son, so I had him go live with his grandmother. In a temporary moment of clarity, I finally got away from that man and ended up right back into the same patterns, and somehow, in the process, got my son back with me. This relationship was like a broken record, and once again, I found myself yet in another abusive relationship and pregnant. You would have thought by now that I would have learned my lesson, but no, I did not. After my first daughter's birth, I went through the whole cycle again. Bad relationships, drugs, couch surfing, and a pregnancy for the third time. My life painted as a mess would be putting it mildly. But at this point, I guess I had grown up enough to at least realize that I knew in my heart something had to change, or I wasn't gonna last much longer. And I really wanted to be better and be there for my 3 children. I kid you not. One day, I walked into a nearby smoke shop with nothing but a quarter in my pocket. My intention was to buy a single cigarette. As I was walking in, I saw a flyer in the doorway. "Earn as you learn" was in big letters. I had never heard of the place on the flyer, but it sounded like it just might be the answer for me to finally get my GED and to have a little cash in my pocket. It was one of those flyers with the little tabs at the bottom. You rip the phone number off. I ripped off the phone number at the bottom and used the quarter instead to make a phone call that would literally change my life forever. The phone rang at YouthBuild, and they invited me to come for an interview the next day. I sat with Mr. Rob and Miss Michelle for hours as they explained the program at YouthBuild. The commitment I had to make, the rules I had to follow, the training I would get in return, the opportunities I would be allowed, the assistance they would help me with so I could succeed. I could not believe what I was hearing, and it was like a bell went off in my brain. They explained that the current class had started 4 months previous and that I was going to have to work extra hard to be able to graduate with the rest of the class. I couldn't believe the support and the encouragement I was getting from the staff there. I honestly had never had this kind of attention and support from a group of people ever before in my life. They seemed to really care that I succeeded. So I decided at that moment I was going to give it my all. First, they helped me find an apartment that my children and I could live in at Beecher Terrace. They helped me find beds so we could have something to sleep on. They helped me find a subsidized daycare where my children would be safe while I was at YouthBuild during the day. Free TARC tickets so we were able to get around. And the list goes on and on. So, every morning in the dead of winter, I got my children and myself up at 4 a.m., stood in the freezing cold, rode a bus 1 hour to daycare, then I rode another 2 buses to YouthBuild so I would be there on time every day by 8:30 to start my classes. In 5 short months, they helped me figure out my learning disability and taught me hands-on. I completed all of my construction certifications across the board, earned my GED, learned gardening and urban conservation, completed several hundred hours of community service all across the city. Plus, I gained a family I never knew I was missing in classmates and the staff there. I had never felt so confident before in my entire life. The life-changing cherry on top of this story was that they had the opportunity for some of the top students to apply for a 2-week internship gardening in the King's Garden in Versailles, France. I could not believe my ears. I couldn't write my application essay fast enough. As luck would have it, I was chosen to go. I felt like I was living a dream from when I was a little girl and I saw the Eiffel Tower on TV one day and daydreamed of going there. To say that the experience was life-changing is an understatement. Flying on an airplane, the language, the food culture, the transportation of being in a big city, the gardening and the sightseeing, it all truly changed me forever, and I'll always be so grateful to YouthBuild for opening my eyes and my heart with this extraordinary gift. The following year, I was asked to serve in the AmeriCorps position at YouthBuild. I managed students in our campus gardens as a precursor to the Urban Conservation Corps, oversaw tree plantings all over Smoketown, taught construction classes, and was a staff chaperone to the following year's class trip to France. An amazing follow-up year to my graduation, honing in on my leadership skills, and then they even facilitated my placement as an intern with Howell & Howell Contractors. Because YouthBuild had taught me that making good decisions for my children and myself led to good things happening all around me, I soon secured a sweet home for us to live in, and I met a wonderful partner, Michael, whom I've built a wonderful life in business with. He fell in love with my kids and adopted them to be his own. He also had a history in the construction business himself, and we took the leap of faith and started our own construction company together, Setco Contracting. Thank you. Over the past 5 years, we have been very successful and grown doing business as house flippers, real estate investors, maintenance contractors with the Housing Authority, painting contractors, landscaping and tech development with our main offices located on Crittenton Drive. Sometimes, in all the busyness, I have to stop and actually pinch myself. YouthBuild was my foundation for success, teaching me research and good business practices, networking and skill building. I absolutely would not be where I am today without YouthBuild. They are the background and the big picture of my life, and I am forever grateful. 9 years ago at the first Building Lives breakfast, I was asked to open the program that morning singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow a cappella. At the time, I felt hope. But it was all still fresh and new, and I wasn't 100% certain I would actually make it over the rainbow as I sang the lyrics to the crowd that morning. I wasn't sure that I'd actually wake up to where the clouds were far behind me and my troubles would melt like lemon drops. But now I can see clearly. My big picture is actually me over the rainbow with the bluebirds thriving and happy. On the journey over that rainbow, I got to see what the rainbow actually was. It was Blueprint 502 pointing me in the right direction and showing me all the beautiful colors that my life now has. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.